Today, I have Dr. Pamela Gerali on the show. Dr. Gerali is a visionary and pioneer in spiritual growth and transformation. She captivates readers and audiences with wisdom and practical guidance from the blueprint for the human spirit, her holistic model for conscious, compassionate living. She is an architect for the human spirit. Pamela is a registered nurse with a master's degree in public health and a doctorate in holistic health sciences. Thank you so much for coming to the program, Pamela.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm really excited to share what I've been learning and how it's
Yes,
changed my life.
wonderful. Well, let's just jump right in at the beginning. A little bit about your childhood and how you came upon this great work that you're doing now.
Yes, well, I was raised in a very tiny town, in a very conservative home, and a very fundamental Christian uh, church. And as a result of that, it was quite narrow, quite limiting. I often say that I was raised with the unholy trinity of guilt, shame, and fear
Oh, wow.
because of that. And that took a lot to overcome. But I had a lovely childhood. It was very safe in the country. We were very independent, self-sufficient, and so I grew up in a loving home. I don't feel as that I was limited, but later I realized that the belief system was limiting because I feared God and I felt that I could never measure up. So when I left home and went to college to become a nurse and pursue a career in public health, I left all that behind and I had nothing spiritual or religious in my life for many years because it was a negative. And eventually I found my way. It was most interesting that a leadership conference was the first time that I did visioning and journaling. And I had this almost transformative experience that led me down a whole new path. And shortly thereafter, I left my job to pursue a spiritual path and to learn as much as I could and be all that I could be. So it was a huge shift.
Nice. And you were doing some wonderful work with at the cancer center and helping people just overcome serious illness. I'm sure
Exactly.
sure that that taught you a lot also.
Yes.
Um,
So leaving that behind was a
yes.
huge shift because I was lost for a while. I didn't know exactly what to do or how to proceed. But because my career was how I identified myself, it was who
Mhm.
I was, my work. But of course, now I have a whole new way of thinking and pursuing life. And my work is my life, it is my passion and my purpose.
Beautiful. So would you consider it what you went through at this conference with the visioning and journeying sort of a transformative experience? Because it sounds like you just turned your whole life around. I mean, it's like a spiritually transformative experience.
Yes, I didn't view it as that
Right.
initially because I wasn't expecting it, but I had, for the first time, looked inside. We had to do all kinds of self-assessments. And when I looked at myself and I had to have some of my peers and my superior and friends also filled out some forms about me, and I learned some things about myself that I didn't really like.
Mm.
So I knew I had some learning to do, I had some growth to do, and I had some, it was a chance for me to change things that I didn't really like about myself.
Right. So the blueprint for the human spirit and the confessions you talk about in your book, The Dance of Ego and Essence. Um, I just love, tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yes. Well, after I left my job. I became a spiritual junkie, and I
Yes.
read everything that I could get my hands on. I went to all kinds of workshops and expos. I was searching. I was just searching so intently to find answers. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I tried all the practices, and I still didn't feel comfortable with it because I was raised with fear, and I was afraid that someone would lead me down the wrong path. And of course, that would be far worse. But eventually, I was given a amazing gift. I was awakened in the middle, well, it was more morning, 3:30 in the morning. For some reason, that's when the skies are clear and information flows in to a lot of people. And for 6 months, I received divine downloads 3 or 4 days a week, and I would lay in bed and for about an hour and a half, and all this information would flow in, and I would lay there and try to remember it. And then I'd get up and enter the information into my computer. And it started as a simple mind, body, spirit triangle, and it kept growing and growing. And with each of the new information that flowed into me, I was almost given opportunities to learn firsthand what it meant and how it affected me. And so this blueprint evolved in harmony with my personal growth. And it was so powerful that it totally changed my life, because I shifted every perception that I had about life, about myself, about love, and it guided me. And I knew that it was so powerful, it could also help other people. So this is the gift that I received, the first one, and it evolved and it continued to evolve until now. I have this beautiful matrix that has 5 dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, intuitive, and spiritual, and 5 fields of existence: the energetic or quantum, self or personal, social or relational, global, and eternal. And so it all fits together in this beautiful, beautiful matrix with sacred geometry. And at the time, I didn't even know what that was. So
Right.
it was just such a gift
Yeah.
that
Why
changed
don't
my
what
life.
could you please define sacred geometry for our listeners?
Well, every shape has energy. And so the shapes, there are quite a few different ones, but circles or spheres are all about wholeness and oneness, and triangles are about change and growth. And so my sacred geometry associated with the blueprint has those 2 elements, and tetrahedrons and things like that. So every shape is different. And certainly a tetrahedron has a triangular base, unlike a pyramid. And so, and it can be upward or downward. And so all of that changes. But the geometry, just like images and pictures and nature, they bypass the brain so that we can understand. It's almost inherent within us to know what those things mean and how they make us feel. So I don't study it or anything, but it just came
Yes.
along with all the information with the blueprint.
And reminds me a lot of times of the cosmos and astrology. And you just think of, you just think of sacred geometry. It's really how the world
Mm-hmm.
has been created. So I
Right.
know a few of your confessions, as you call them in the book, because they were things that you found out you wanted to work on. And I just wanted to talk a little bit, just about a couple of them. And the first one I will mention is from doubt to certainty.
Yes, yes. Well, before I talk about that, may I just explain a little bit about how this book came to be? Because it's
Yes,
very
please.
powerful experience.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of us have had what we call spiritually transforming experiences. And this truly was one. I had viral thyroiditis, which was very bad. I was down in bed for about 6 months and could hardly do anything. And for someone who was so energetic and so lively and healthy, and that was a low blow. But
Wow.
it was almost like the universe was saying, you need to slow down. And I had been working on about 6 different committees and projects and doing everything but my work. And so it was almost like, well, if you can't say no, we'll help you.
Yeah.
So I said, I just rested and healed. And when I felt well enough, I said, I am ready to resume my passion and my purpose, the blueprint. I am ready to work. So, what would you like me to do first? And I had a lot of incomplete projects. I thought, well, one of those. But no, I was guided to get up early, to go to my office, to meditate and journal confessions for 40 days. And at first, I didn't get a number. And I thought, okay, I can do this for 21 days. It was like, okay, 30, 40 days. Okay. And I thought, 40? Why 40? But when I started researching it and thinking about it, I realized that 40 is the number of rebirth. And there are so many stories in the Bible and other sacred literature about 40. We're talking about the 40-day flood and 40 years in the wilderness, and gestation is 40 weeks. And, so there's so many things about 40 that are really important. So I came to my office not knowing what was going to happen, and just sat on my chair, lit a candle to kind of give myself a little focus, and closed my eyes and paused in the silence. And within a few minutes, a word came to me: discipline. You have got to be kidding. I can't stand the idea of anybody telling me what to do or why to do it. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's my first confession.
Right.
So I wrote that down, and then out flowed, in almost like automatic writing, my personal experience with discipline. I was disciplined very harshly because of the religion and the conservative home I was raised in. But discipline, when we integrate it into ourselves, it becomes self-discipline. And that's something that we have to do. And then discipline, when we learn how to say no to one thing, then we can say yes to something else. And discipline transforms into direction. And we choose our own path and move forward. So that was the very first day. And I was like, oh my, wow, look what I had learned. Look where I've shifted.
Right.
And the next day, every day, I received a word. And so you had asked about certainty and how doubt becomes certainty. Well, I doubted myself a lot because everything I thought I knew, I realized wasn't right. I was taught to fear God. God is love. And I doubted myself because I had a marriage that didn't work out in the past. And I had just remarried. And so after I switched on to my spiritual path, but I doubted some of my decisions. I just didn't know whether I was good enough or making the right choices. But then I learned to listen within. I learned to trust my intuition. And this beautiful gift of intuition is something that we all have, but most of us have shut it down. When our children have that, but we're told no, you have to color within the lines and don't listen to that, or you don't see angels and
Right.
things like that. But you learn how to trust that inner voice. And I realized that inner voice is divine guidance. And we call it all different things, but that is when we can learn to trust that, then we know that for certain, the answers are within us, and what we know and what we can feel. I mean, when I experienced what I call truth, I get goosebumps and I have this shiver in my body, and I just know it's right. I know the answer is right. So that is how doubt transforms into certainty.
I love that. And it is so true to when we validate children, let's say seeing angels, deceased loved ones, or having friends that are what we would call imaginary, but validate and listen
Yes,
and be quiet with them and encourage them to, ask questions. And for us to ask them questions, it helps them to trust their inner guidance. And what a
exactly.
gift at a young age, right? I mean, we had to wait and do it when we're when
I
we were
know.
older. Beautiful.
I
So
didn't
what
even
is
know I was intuitive, and
right,
of
right.
course, when you come from a science background in nursing, everything's very logical and
Yes,
rational, and you're very skeptical, and you have to follow the science. And
right, right. So what is your, I don't know if the word would be favorite, but what is the one of the confessions that they're all so important, but that just really you feel impacted, that you thought of days after and it just really turned your life around?
oh, there were so many, and and they're universal issues. I want to point that
Yes,
out because this isn't just about me. So what
absolutely.
I did was I just went with the process and became so radically honest. It was almost scary. And I think what that does is gives other people permission to do the same thing.
Mhm.
And we have to do that. We have to get real with ourselves if we're going to make a difference in our lives. If we're going to get past all those blocks and blunders and bluffs, that we use to try to make ourselves look good and, be successful. But there are so many things. And one that really touched me a lot was from flawed to innocent.
Mm.
And it happened later in the process, but I was told over and again that I was unworthy, an unworthy sinner, and that um, I had to be perfect almost in order to make it inside the pearly gates. And I knew that I couldn't. I knew that I could not be perfect because I just, uh, we're human
No, it is
and we
right.
make mistakes. Of course, in that religion of my youth, they weren't mistakes. They weren't errors. They were sins, and sins meant, you went down instead of up, so to speak. But in the process of learning from the blueprint, I realized that true, we are human, but we are also divine. No one ever told me about my original divinity.
Mm.
And we were made in the image and likeness of God. I mean, we are godlings here on earth. In fact, Jesus said, and one of the psalmists said, ye are gods. And so there is that divine part of us that is so pure, that is so innocent and so powerful, that when we recognize and embrace that part of us, the essence of our being, instead of following ego all the time to try to make ourselves look good, uh, essence, if ego only knew essence was perfect anyways, it would be much easier. But we are innocent, and that's something that I found so powerful. And it reminded me of a very important spiritually transformative experience that I had. Another one, I had the blueprint and worked with it for about 6 years. And it was a very interesting intellectual exercise and process. I mean, I was thrilled because I like charts and things, so it was
Right.
quite, it appealed to my left brain. It was overly developed. And then one morning I was meditating, and I'm not good at it because I'm hyper. But I was sitting on my lanai It was raining. And very quickly, I went off into Never Never Land, and I experienced a dramatic event in the lives of 15 people. I believe they were past lives or archetypes that are common to all of us, but very specific, gut-wrenching experiences, one after the other in an hour and a half, to the point where, I mean, I was dying, I was grieving, I was elated. With each of these, it was different. And some were children, and some were adults, some were women, some were men. They were from all walks of life. Some were just your basic person, everyday person, and others were a little more elevated. And they spanned the ages from ancient Mayan times to more early 1900s. When I came to, I ran into my office and I wrote down just a couple of lines in my journal about each one, because it was a Sunday and I was going to go to church. And but I wrote them in a different order in which I had experienced them. And that was significant later on, because I went to church and my friend said, "What happened to you?" Because I was so blown away. I just could hardly function. And she said, "Go home and write about it. Write everything that you can recall." And so I did. And someday it will be a book. But I wrote their stories down, and in the process realized that each one of them reflected a different aspect of my life. Each one of them fit into a box of my blueprint matrix. They showed me exactly what that meant. Each one of them reflected different levels of spiritual evolution. For instance, there were a lot of victims. Well, that's the lowest level of spiritual awareness that there is, because we're helpless. We think everything happens to us beyond our control, and something that we have to release if we are going to evolve and become our best self and fulfill our higher purpose and whatever. So some of them were victims. And some of them tried hard with ego effort to make things happen and mostly failed. And then others got it. They lived consciously and compassionately. And I thought, wow, how perfect is this? I mean, here I had a chance to experience firsthand what the blueprint really was. And from that moment on, it was no longer just an interesting intellectual exercise. It came to life. I had integrated it into my way of being. Well, then one other thing happened. Later that week, I visited a friend who was a counselor, had lunch with her, and she said, "Would you," I told her all about this. Right. And she said, "Well, would you like to do a regression?" And I thought,
I think I just did one.
Anymore. But I said, "Oh, why not? What's one more, right?" She guided me back in time. And I was a child at the feet of Jesus when he said, "Let the children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And I thought, wow.
Wow.
I mean, this is 20 some years ago, and I still feel this way about it.
Yes.
In that moment, I knew exactly what that meant. Children are innocent, they're playful, they're loving, they're open-minded, they're not judgmental, they are innocent, they're pure. And everything that we learn as adults, everything that we do on our spiritual path is to get us back to that point, get us back to that state of pure love that children are. And I thought, this is perfect. And that one archetype, the beloved child of God, represents the eternal realm in my blueprint for the human spirit. And so what a powerful life-changing experience that was. I mean,
Wow.
it's hard for me to talk about. I mean, someday I have to write this book
Yes, yes, you
because
do.
it was it was beyond anything you can describe. But every now and then we have the opportunity to just experience things, and it is through an experience. It's not what we read, it's not what we know, but something we have to fully feel in our bones and in our entire being in order for us to truly be all that we are and experience life in its fullest.
Mm, what a gift. And I think that many feel like these experiences have to be these huge, you don't have to die, you don't have to have a near death experience or some of the other things, but that it can just happen. It can just happen in meditation. It can happen while you're taking a
Mhm.
walk on a beautiful fall
Yes,
day. And
yes,
it can happen to everyone, but just to be present and be
yes,
aware, yeah, and
exactly.
open, as you
And
say, trust,
yes,
trust, and
yes,
think how a little one being around children and the caregiver, the adult, not only is that way, but talks about it and shares and what are the flowers singing to you? This is what they're saying,
yes,
or whatever it may be, to try to keep that, keep some of that innocence as they begin to navigate life as they get older.
exactly. And I think that is our biggest role with children, to show them through our example how to love, how to communicate
Mm,
openly, how to be present instead of being busy all the time, and how to allow them so they too can experience life in the fullest, so that we don't squelch their creative spirits
right.
and make them color inside the lines or whatever, but to um, feel free to express and to share in a way that we can learn so much from them. If we think about how loving and open children are, what a gift that is if we could just follow in their steps, right?
Absolutely. Someone said to me the other day that when you when you share with a child what we're talking about, even though they already, live that way in their hearts, but validate, etc., then they can happen to life and not just have life happen to them. And it's so true for all of us, right? We just don't want
Exactly.
life to happen to us. We want to happen to life, which you are a great example of that.
Well, I have made a commitment to just showing up. I do intuitive healing work, and I think I mentioned that I didn't realize I was intuitive, but when it evolved in harmony also with the blueprint, and I got to a point where I could just sense things, but only with intention. I don't do this
Yes.
like some people do. It is only with intention and in a state of prayer, and where I uh, allow myself to become like a mirror, and I speak in first person, and I reflect back to the individual firsthand what I sense, and my body goes into motion. So it's not just I'm not hearing things or seeing things, which I do that too, but it's more what they call clairsentious. I
Mm.
feel things. Um, I know things. But when I'm working with somebody, all of a sudden I start moving and I just know what those movements mean. In fact, one morning, 3:30 in the morning, I received another divine download, and it's almost like what flowed over my body was this sense of knowing that every part of my body, And every motion and every position, I just knew then what it meant. It was just like whoosh, just like that.
Right.
But in the process, then I learned how to share this gift with others. And when I'm working with someone, I never know what's going to happen because I don't want to know. I don't want my mind to jump to conclusions or make assumptions. But if I'm playing an air piano and I'm talking about harmony and melody and discordance and stuff like, I'm like, is music important to you? Oh, yes, I am a concert pianist. And I'm like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but things like that happen. And in the process, I have forgotten what point I was going to make about being intuitive.
It's okay.
But we know we open ourselves to these special gifts and we share them with others when we are guided to do that. And in the process, we can make a difference.
Well,
So
you're talking also about feelings, and that is the part of, feeling from the living from the heart instead
yes,
of the mind. And feelings are so, I think they're so underrated in Western civilization. I mean, you hear people so many times say, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or don't feel that way. And
how can
and
you feel
it's so important to feel deeply
this?
and feel from your heart, because that's where the truth is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, if we don't feel things, we can't experience life. We can't
Right.
experience ourselves or our relationships with other people, with our relationship with God or with the universe, and consequently, feeling is a part of it. My work is holistic, and all my efforts are to bring our mind and our heart and our entire being into alignment with essence, with the truth of our being, so that our actions are compatible with our thoughts and our feelings and our knowings. So it's not
Right.
just about what we think, but it's what we know in the depths of our being. So that to me is like this gut knowing that then is compatible. We just bring it all into alignment so we can live more harmoniously and authentically. Because if we're just functioning out here by our brains, or if we're overly emotional and that isn't in alignment with everything else, then we're off balance. And so when we bring it all into alignment, we can find a greater sense of balance and be authentic. And that is a part of what I believe the blueprint really taught me.
Right.
And
I
then, of
know.
course, it taught me about how to honor my higher purpose and to find that. I love what I do. I know that I am here to share the blueprint for the human spirit. And one day I was feeling a little smug about having, nailed my sacred mission, so to speak. So I asked my husband, who's retired and was, at that time he was golfing a lot, hitting a little white ball around, I says, well, I know why I'm here. Do you know what your purpose is? He says, sure. I am here to support you so you can fulfill your higher purpose. I thought,
Oh my
thank
gosh.
you, God. Isn't that awesome?
Wow.
Yes. So,
Beautiful. So
anyways, but
Pamela, how have you how have you changed? I mean, do your friends feel like you've changed with all this work and all these downloads and all this intuition that's coming forth? How has Pamela changed?
yes, I've changed from the inside out. And when I was in the workplace, I was very masculine in my approach. I was like a bulldozer,
Right.
very pushy. I pushed myself because I became my own worst master, and I pushed other people and I made things happen and I had to be in charge. I wasn't always nice about it either. So I think I have become a kinder, more gentle person who is compassionate and dedicated to helping others and to uplifting others. And certainly one thing I did learn is that it doesn't matter where you work, or what you do, or who you serve. All we have to do is show up every moment as the love that we are. And that was a gift that came to me in the middle of one of my intuitive healings when someone asked me, should I change jobs? And that's the guidance that came to me. And I thought, how perfect is that? All we have to do is show up as our best self, as love, and we make a difference.
Wow. Well, we need to wrap it up, Pamela,
Sure.
but what would you like to share? Well, you just did actually, but any other words of wisdom that you
Yes.
have that you'd like to share?
Well, I would encourage everybody to get real with themselves, to get radically honest. My book, The Dance of Ego and Essence, transformed my life, showed how much I had learned and grown. And I believe everybody can benefit from that information. And it's not like you have to do that process yourself, although it would be great and there is a companion journal that goes with the book, The
Nice.
Dance of Ego and Essence. And it's a holistic process too, because there is time for us to read, then to write, to allow things to emerge, all that, the emotional experience to emerge. And then I received wonderful affirmations, which I have turned into cards that also are very lovely. And I received meditations for each of those 40 days, plus the epilogue. And I've just spent time with a gifted artist, musician here in Naples, Florida, where I live. And he played music behind while I recorded the meditations. And they are so touching, as opposed to being in written form. They're in written form in the companion journal. But when the recordings come out, I just think people are just going to be blown away because they are so powerful. But I would encourage everybody to do that. In the process, you can let go of so much stuff that keeps us from fully experiencing life in the fullest, from living to our highest potential and discovering our divine blueprint and our birthright, which is so magnificent. So I would just encourage everybody to do that and to join me. I have a series of classes coming out. And so plus these intuitive healings that I do are transforming as well.
Nice. Do you have a copy of your book you can show?
Yes. This is The
So
Dance of
pretty. I
Ego and
love the
Essence.
purple.
My husband took this picture when we were in China, and it was just so perfect.
Wow.
Because it's like the veil between reality and fantasy, or whatever we're living in, and so I just thought it was such a beautiful, beautiful picture that it perfectly conveyed what the message of the dance between ego and essence.
Right. Oh, beautiful. And Pamela,
And we're all divine divas.
Yes, we are. So if people want to find you, how would they do that?
I have a website, DR for Dr. Pamela Gerali, GERALI.com. And on it, you can find my books. You can find a little bit about me. If you want to hear more about my story, I wrote and performed a one-woman show called Confessions of a Spiritually Promiscuous Woman, and it's on my About page. Of course, my part doesn't really begin until about minute 12, so you have to kind of advance that a little bit. But anyways, that's my story, and it's kind of a universal story as well of how we discover who we are. But we come full circle. We don't have to leave everything behind. We come to a new understanding of things, and that is also a gift. So my books, information about my healing work, which is called Spiritual Blueprinting, is also on there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. You're certainly a gift to the world. You're doing so much. And I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much, Marla. I bless you for all you have done to help children and to uplift humanity in your own special way too. Thank you.
Pamela. And you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. To you as well.
Bye bye.